Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Leadership Lounge. I'm super excited to have two of the best managers we have at leadership with us today who've been doing this for a long time, who together have managed and coached dozens and dozens and dozens of people over the years. And hopefully you heard the last episode where they talked about the importance of managing people and the idea of humans in the workforce, and not just managing numbers and strategic initiatives, but managing people and leading people. And today we're going to talk about some tips. So today's all tips. Get ready. We're going to try to give you a lot of them. If you take away one from today's episode, then that's success. If you can take away 3 or 5, and hopefully we'll be a little competitive here on this end to see who's got the tip that is going to, most of you are going to start downloading into your work. Okay, so let us know how it goes. We'll put also, Tatiana will put any kind of things that you need to download or so forth into the liner notes. So if you have some ideas, you can always visit our website at tlpnyc.com for lots of other materials and information, or our YouTube channel where we give lots more tips as well. All right, so I want to start with the topic that probably people ask about the most is how to get the most value out of their one-on-one meetings, either as the person getting managed, like the employee, or as the supervisor. What are some tips, guys, around getting the best kind of one-on-ones that you've experienced? Tom, let's start with you. You got one?
There's a lot. It's a great topic. It's really deep.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep you to one, and you can get more in later. We're gonna give Yindy a chance too. Okay, future episode. I'm writing it down.
I guess one of my top elements of a one-on-one is making sure that they go first, and that you as the manager don't lead the conversation, but you allow them to lead. So they know the structure ahead of time. I always tell them the full structure, and they know that they're going to lead, and I don't ask them how they're doing, right? That could feel like I'm letting them lead by letting them talk about how they're doing. And I don't want to do that because now I'm leading the conversation, actually. Sorry.
All of a sudden you're super popular there.
I know. So yeah, that's one of those classic, family moments during a podcast. So anyway, it's having them lead. So the question, I always use the exact same prompt.
And who is them, Tom? Who's them? Just to be clear.
Them is my direct report. So it's a person that I manage directly in some capacity. And it's not always a full-time person. Depends on the type of job that they're doing. I'll have one-on-ones with people that aren't always my directs either. Like I might just have a project with them. Anyway, I always have the same prompt, which is what's up, because that then enables them to say whether or not what's up for them is about how they're feeling or about a particular status report that they're working on or whatever. It's the most open-ended one that I can think of. So that's my first tip, I guess, for one-on-ones is to have your prompt and to have it be as open-ended as possible so that you're not actually leading accidentally. It should be that they lead that beginning.
Great. Okay. We got our first tip on the board. Yindy, you got one?
Yes. Just to piggyback off of what Tom said, I think also with the one-on-one, always have the one-on-one. Just always have it. It's the first thing that can fall to the wayside. Yeah. It's like there's all these meetings happening. There's all these deadlines. Always have the one-on-one, because it's also an incredible opportunity to get to know your staff. And that is so important as we manage different people with different love languages, and to really take that time to get to know who it is that's reporting to you, what's on their plate, what are their family, their kids' name. I mean, it's just such an important opportunity because you don't have that one-on-one time in any other capacity sometimes.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think that you're so right. And managers will say to me like, oh yeah, it gets canceled sometimes, but they seem fine with it. And then when I talk to them, they're like, he cancels all the time on me. It's so annoying. But they don't act, because you're their boss. They're not going to be like, damn you. Instead, they're like, okay, sure, no problem. But inside there is disappointment there, and we don't always know it as the bosses. So yeah, I agree. Stick to it, right? And reschedule if you have to.
Always have it. That's right. That's right. Super important.
Great. All right, Tom, what's your next one on?
Yeah, just to also just deepen that, it's got to be in the calendar scheduled, but it's okay to move it, like you said, Christine. Like it's just got to be in the calendar. Are we still on the one-on-ones, or are we moving on?
Yeah, if you got another, unless you're out.
No, I'm not out. So one-on-ones tend to be, I usually schedule them half hour, 30 minutes. Depends on the context. 30 minutes usually, right? I find over time that it shortens. Sometimes they're 15 minutes. But the key is to I always try to make sure that they get everything that they need to get out. So if it's like half hour and it's a tight schedule for me and they take 25 minutes, I'll get my 5. I don't jump in and say, okay, you've done, it's 15 minutes. Now it's my turn. Like, it really is so much about them. So I do also try to, and then if I need to reschedule a different meeting with them to dive into whatever thing I needed to check in, or maybe what I needed to tell them was in an email. So I'll just say, I'll send you an email with my bullets and just reply letting me know that it's good. Because the key thing here is that it's building relationships and that you're getting information from them that you need more than they're getting information from you. Like, it's my way of mitigating maybe resentment that's building up over time. That's something that I've seen happen is I didn't have my one-on-one for 3 weeks. There was a misunderstanding or a miscommunication 2 weeks ago, and it's been festering. And then we talk, and I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. And I'm like, oh, I've been sitting here for 2 weeks thinking you meant this. So I really need to hear and listen and pay attention and learn from them during my one-on-ones more than like, oh, this is my chance to just give them all the directives that I'm supposed to give them.
I love it. And you just taught me something, because I don't think I've ever followed up with an email with the points that I didn't get across. So maybe I'll try that. And that's a good idea. Because, I had a one-on-one. I know Yindy has something to say to me about this, but but I had a couple one-on-ones yesterday, and I noticed later there were some points I forgot to mention, and I circled them to talk to them about next time. But yeah, why can't I just email them? Duh. Thanks. Okay, Yindy, what do you want to say?
I think it's just a great opportunity to learn their love language. It's like you're having these one-on-ones that maybe the email is essential for some of the people that report to you. Maybe it's a different way to follow up, but it's just an incredible opportunity to really just understand the best communication possible between two people. And it's really in that one-on-one that you can figure that out together. I just want to shift it a little bit. And I also, a huge tip I have that also can happen in the one-on-one, but a little bit different topic, different lane, is to really have clear goals and to communicate them constantly. It's just, you can't just say it once at the beginning of the year and then circle back at the end of the fiscal year and be like, hey, did we hit these things? You got to give context throughout the year. These are why the big meetings take place, and you're always connecting to the bigger picture. So it feels like you're not, like, these goals aren't arbitrary, to always bring it back to the bigger picture. This is why we're doing it. And to make sure that you're circling back to it throughout the year is really what makes a team effective.
That's interesting. Great. Because I do think one of the unseen or kind of like quiet threats that happens to any project or company, any operations that you have, is this mission creep. And you have so many competing constraints and everybody has their needs, and it's totally natural and human to know, like, these are my 5 goals, and that at the start of the fiscal year, and then the end of the year you realize, oh, my goals actually shift. My behavior was aligned with a different set of goals than the original goals that we set up. So now I'm having my performance review and realizing, oh my gosh, I went off track from those goals that we set up at the beginning of the year, because that's just where the current kind of pulls you in that direction. So having this awareness of, like, I always have to be kind of like fighting mission creep, and knowing it is like a riptide or a kind of current that's happening. How am I setting myself up, and what systems can I put in place to make sure that my team is consistently on track for the goals that we set up at the beginning of the year? And to Yindy's point, those are some methods to do that.
It also helps because sometimes you just get stuck in the muck, right? The day-to-day things, but to understand that is actually contributing to a greater goal also helps continue to inspire and motivate your staff, because, there's so many days where you're like, oh, I'm doing this thing, and it's so mundane, but it really is contributing to the greater goal. And I think it's important that people can consistently make that connection with their work.
Yeah, I had it in one of my one-on-ones yesterday. This is to the point of who starts, right? And also, like, being prepared. If you're the employee going in to meet with your direct report, what a joy it is when someone is really ready for that meeting, right? And this person came in yesterday. So she came in and she had a piece of paper, and it had different categories of things that her to do, like things that she wants to get done in a week, right? In different categories that are related to her goals, to your point, right? And then over in the right-hand column down, kind of linearly, she called them gets. So anything that she kind of had won, whether it was someone had accepted a proposal or whatever she had, was down there, right? And then she had an idea at the bottom for, like, notes or help, like things where she needed help. And what was great about it, and I'll get her to make a copy, and I'll put it in the liner notes of the episode if anybody wants to see it. But she had it on a clipboard, a real clipboard, and she had multiple copies, and each week she had a new one, right? And she said it's what she does at the end of the week is she checks off, like, how many things has she done, and then she noticed that one pocket of her goals, let's say in this case it was like college outreach, was empty. And so it's Friday, and she's like, okay, I got to do something related to this. And then she made sure that on her task list for the day she did something related to that so she could fill it in, so that she knew that she was addressing all of these goals. goals. But also when we hit our one-on-one, she went right to that help column, after she showed me her form, that new form she was using. We went right to that help column, and I was able to go through and give her, kind of clear the path for some things that needed to get done. And then I also was able to say, hey, I think you're missing this aspect on your form. Can you figure out a way to add this in? And she was like, oh, great. Okay. And so it was really a robust one-on-one that stayed very focused, and yet she was leading. And she felt really good about that, and I felt great. Like, oh my God, this is wonderful. I can just kind of help support her in her mission to achieve the goals rather than me feel like I have to drive it all. I'm just kind of in the background while she's driving. So anyway, that was kind of fun. So I appreciated her being, the tip is to you figure out how you could be best prepared to go into your boss, no matter what level you are. If you run the company, you have a board of directors. Everybody's got somebody they're reporting to. And how do you lead that conversation? All right, so let's open it up now. Maybe there's other things. You can certainly give more tips on one-on-ones, but if you have other things related to how to lead or manage people more effectively that people can start to implement. Tom, what's another thing you have down?
Well, this is similar to what you were saying in that it also can be integrated into those one-on-ones, but it doesn't have to be. It could be in any way. Or one thing I really rely on a lot, and I love for efficiency. So it's red, amber, green reports is my solution, having red, amber, green reports. The problem that it solves is that people, when you ask how they're doing on particular projects, you'll sometimes get 5 times the information that you actually need. And so while you really just need a brief, it's hard for people to understand how to give a brief because they're so in the weeds. And so something I found, it's not perfect, but it does help quite a bit to streamline. And I'll let you know some of the possible pitfalls of it. Is that red, amber, green? So red, amber, green is just code. Green means I'm on track and there's no threat. Like I don't see any reason why I won't be on track towards this goal. So if it's a certain some sales I'm supposed to get for the year, some total, I'll know whether or not I'm on track for that. I haven't achieved it yet, but I'm on track to achieving it. I'm green. I'm on track, no threat. It's also then amber, which is like orange, basically, says I'm not on track to that goal, but I have a plan. And then I'll just tell my manager what the plan is. And so there's really no threat. Like I'm not on track currently, but there's no threat to me actually achieving the goal in the end. That's amber. And then red says I'm not on track and I don't really have a plan to be on track. Like there's an actual threat. Like I might not achieve that goal by the end of the year by whatever point, whatever the deadline is. And then blue is another one, which is just means it's done. Like it's actually achieved, but that's cool.
I've never heard blue before.
Yeah, blue just says complete. So if they've achieved the goal, then it's blue. Then it's like we can move on. But, now it's on to the next project. So the cool thing about this is I could say to someone, hey, what's our status with X? And they'll say, I'm green. And I might say, tell me a little bit about it. And then they'll tell me a little bit about it. Because it's self-reporting. That's the problem. Sometimes people self-report green when it's actually amber. So I want to hear a little bit of detail. But if I just told them, hey, tell me about the project, they're going to give me all this information. All I really want to know is, are you on track? So green says on track, no threat. Amber, I'll just ask, my step then is to say, what's your plan? I don't tell them what they need to do. I ask, what's your plan to get on track? They tell me their plan, and I either approve or I make suggestions on the plan. Like I might want to change the plan a little bit or give suggestions, or I say, that's a good plan. Tell me how it goes next week. Our deadline to be on track will be in 2 weeks. Then we'll be on track. And if we're not, we'll check it. Red, then basically that means they need to be involved in the creation of the plan. Or maybe they need additional resources of some sort, some kind of course correction generally to be on track. So the thing is that one of the challenge, and I'll try to make this as brief as possible, the risk that people have with red, amber, green is that they'll say, oh, yay, we're green. That reward tends to make people want to say green so that their manager's happy. And if they say they're red and you're like, oh, you give them some sort of like they feel shame or bad about being red, they're going to not want to say red. So I try to be as neutral as possible about the information because it's just information. I'm grateful for the information and I try to help them. And I always try to be a real positive framing about all of it, not coddling or not facing reality, but that there's no shame in being red. It's just a status and we're going to, okay, cool. So these are our next steps. Like I have to lead well after that. If I'm punishing in any way for red, they're going to avoid saying it. Then I won't know the actual status because it is self-reporting. So it's important for my behavior will actually impact the way that they report. But anyway, the red, amber, green, then I find in my one-on-ones, I'll just say, what's your status on this? Or like green, what's your status on this? Amber, cool. What's your plan? Da, da, da. Like it really helps my communications to be quick. And then I will also keep in mind, I have to also double check. I have to verify. I'll look into it to make sure that their self-reporting is accurate, but it gives me a lot of information in a very condensed way.
Yeah. And one thing I really want to emphasize, with all of these great tips and the one-on-ones and the red, amber, green, the root of it is you also really have to know their job. Because I think in this day and age, as people are getting promoted faster and we're getting handed teams, and none of these things will work if you don't really know their job. Like, you need to know their day to day from start to beginning, because then you can ask the right questions. You can understand what they do. And, I've been at fault where sometimes there's a position that I feel that someone may be more knowledgeable on a specific topic that I'm not. So I just trust that that person is going to lead and do the right thing. And then I stop asking the right questions. And that's when, things can get a little wonky, or someone can have a paternity leave. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening in this position right now? But it's just, we can't implement any of these tips unless you really know their job. So I think that's, that goes without saying, like, it's so important to really understand the people who report to you, what they do day to day, and to understand it so you can ask the right questions and make sure that the one-on-ones are effective and the red, amber, greens are the correct, that the flow is, that you're getting the information that you need for everyone to succeed.
Interesting. So sometimes people are self-reporting maybe higher or lower, and you find out maybe too late if you're not checking every once in a while, right? I mean, you must get to the point with some people where you have trust built up where you don't have to do that anymore.
Oh yeah,
right?
That's glorious. Yeah, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, okay.
But definitely, over time you do get that, because and it helps with the one-on-ones. It kind of helps create that environment where you start to know each other so well that you can intuit.
So how do you do that in a way that people, I get so many people who are new managers that hate the idea of micromanaging so much that they, for instance, I could see them getting caught in what you're saying, where they do trust the person and they don't verify any of that. How do you verify without seeming like you don't trust them, or you're seeming like you're, micromanaging them in some way or looking over their shoulder? Like, what does that look like, that check?
I say at the beginning, I'll tell them, like, I'm of course going to be, just checking stuff, especially at the beginning. I'll be doing more checking, and as we go, I'll be able to step back a bit on that. But I think it's just good for people to know that someone's reviewing stuff. What gets measured gets done. If they know that I'm measuring it, if they know what the measurement is, like, that's the important thing.
Yeah. So, like, does that mean that sometimes you're checking with the client just to be like, hey, how are things going? Just to get another voice?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah, we do that.
I gotcha.
Yindy's my boss. I send out surveys to my clients that I don't see. She sees them, and then she talks to me about it. Like, and I'm fine with that. It's not a threat to me, but it's not a threat to me because I know Yindy's going to handle it fairly. If I get a client that says that they're unhappy, she's not going to make me feel terrible about it. She's going to tell me and then ask me what my plan is, and we'll work on it together. And then I'll go and act on that plan, and like, it's a team. So I don't feel like I'm alone out there. The fact that I know that she's got my back, and part of having my back is letting me know when I'm not doing well. The way that she responds when I'm not doing well, though, is the key. Like, if she were to come down on me,
it's not a gotcha moment.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like some people manage in a way because they were raised a certain way by their parents. Even they might have the same kind of response that a parent would to a child as a manager, and that creates real resentment.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm not your child here. Don't talk to me like that. You have to, like, always show respect, treat the person like an adult, but also let them know, like, you're off track here, and so let's get you on track.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not like I caught you and here we go, but like, hey, we may have a difference of opinion because you think this is green and I think this is, like, my instinct and my experience tells me that this may be a little more off track than you realize, right? Like, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're not lying to you. They just, they're maybe more optimistic and don't have the same gut instinct refined as you do from years of doing this work.
And asking the right questions. Again, it goes back to knowing what to ask, because, I think Tom and I have a really strong understanding of what everybody does. We've done them. I think at some point in our career here. So it's asking the right questions, and it's coming from a place of openness, in that you didn't do this on purpose. It's the listening, it's the asking the right questions, and then figuring it out together. Because I think people shut down if you come at someone and accusing them of, I can't believe you let this trainer, suffer with bad classroom management for, like, not, a few weeks. Like, I think it's again, you gotta ask the right questions so you can figure out the solution together, and not just come in hot and accuse people of,
When by the way, for those listening, when she says trainer, our part-time employees are generally that their title is called trainer. So she just means your employee.
Yeah. Okay, great. What's another one?
Okay, so I'm always kind of going, like, you want to throw one out, Yindy?
No, go ahead.
I know we're doing this ping pong or tennis match here, so I guess it's mine, right? So, okay, years ago, I was listening to Esther Perel. She has a podcast where she does coaching for couples. And so she's giving advice to couples live, or not live, but, in a podcast format. It's really good. And I remember her giving advice to a couple where it was a male and female and husband and wife. And I think the wife said something that made the husband defensive. And then he started to explain himself. And Esther Perel stopped him and said, "You don't need to defend your position right now. Tell her what she said and what she meant by what she said." And so he stopped for a second and then he reflected and he said back to her what he thought she meant by what she said. And then when he was done, she said, "Yes." And that was all that needed to happen. She needed to be heard, And so that was a revelation for me in terms of like the way I manage my, relationships outside of work, the way that I sort of have my relationships outside of work. But also I took it to work right away. So then I thought the next time someone makes me feel defensive, I'm going to try this. And one of my directs had a complaint about my management and in my one-on-one, and they were telling me about it. There's reasons behind the things that I was doing that they were missing. They were, in my opinion, they were understanding my motivations different than what motivations were. And my instinct was to defend myself and explain the reason behind the thing. Because there's a bigger context that people don't always see for why you do something as a manager. And then they might feel like frustrated about it. And so rather than then defending myself and it can become a back and forth, I stopped and I chose the Esther Perel method, which is just basically, it's not new, but it was new to me then. And I said, well, let me make sure that I understand. And I said back to him, and exactly, I said, am I right? And he goes, yeah. It was exactly the same thing. He's like, yeah. And it was clear, like he just wanted to be heard. It didn't matter what might be motivating me or whatever. And then we just moved on. So that is now a tool that I use all the time. Is like when I feel defensive, I identify the feeling of feeling defensive and I stop and I say, I'm going to say back to you what I think I understand just to make sure that I get it right. And I say it back, and then 50% of the time, that's all that needed to happen. And then the other percent of the time, we at least have clarity and we understand each other. And then now, because I think most arguments happen because people are arguing against what's called, I guess, a straw man. Like it's the thing that it's not actually their position that you're arguing against. And they're arguing against the thing that's not actually your position. And you're just arguing. So it's like important to say it back so that they know, so that you have clarity about their position. And I know as part of management is everything we've been kind of discussing is when everything's going pretty well. But usually leadership, and we've talked about this before, it's not usually that much fun. It's often kind of a struggle and hard. And so I need to have those things in place for me to manage when it's actually challenging me and hard. And it's I'm feeling a certain way. So that for me is a really good trigger for me to then show that I'm hearing them, I guess. And then I actually know that my next words will be related to their actual position.
Yeah. It also forces you to have the tough conversations in real time, which is, you have to have them in real time. It's just less relevant or they'll add up, and then you're unpacking, weeks of things that went wrong. But, to Tom's point, is having these tactics will enable you to do that, because I think it's a really important way to manage people is you have to have them in real time. You can't wait. Don't wait. Do it in the one-on-one. It all goes together. Have the one-on-one, have the tough conversation, and do it in a timely fashion in order for it to be effective.
I did a workshop yesterday where I was a participant, so I was a learner, and it was on listening. And I thought, oh, okay, I got that. I understand this. But what was so interesting to see is a group of CEOs doing like basic listening exercises that honestly, we have a big school program in schools, and we do the same thing with, third graders. And so here we are with a bunch of CEOs doing the same kinds of active listening exercises. And it was so interesting because one of the things that we now take for granted, and this is all of us, is that we have these things in our hands or in our pockets all the time, which is our cell phones, right? And we don't even realize, or on our wrists, how much we are interrupted, or our relationship is somehow stalled, or our listening is compromised because of them. And one thing, we were doing this exercise, but what everybody had a hard time with was putting that phone away for that conversation. Even those 10, 15-minute exercises on listening to, okay, you're going to tell me about your day and I'm going to try to actively listen and not, that phone was there. Like, and people look at it without even thinking about it. And how often, and I know I do this both at home and at work. Sometimes I'll be in one-on-ones, let's say all day, because Monday have them back to back for a lot of it. Well, the thought of not having my phone to see if there's some emergency out there. But what happens is, and the facilitator demonstrated this really well. If I have that phone up looking at me, blinking when anything happens, and let's face it, they're mostly not emergencies, I am sending a subliminal signal to that person that they are not as important as whatever is happening on this phone or who's connected to that phone. And the same thing happens at home. So even though my kids are older now and they're not young and isn't impressionable, if I am sitting there and not far from the dinner table is that phone, or it's in my pocket, or my watch is constantly vibrating, like what is happening that is taking me away from being fully present to that person and letting them know that I value them, I want to be there, and that they're important to me. And that creates a very different feeling than having that phone clenched in your hand or on the desk at all, and she even went a step further and said, we often go into meetings with our phones. We just do. So don't try to hide it, right? Just say, I'm turning off my phone, or I'm putting it over here because I want to hear what you have to say, so that you're actually calling attention to the fact that you're putting your phone away, because it's also teaching them to do the same thing for others. And that was a good lesson for me, because I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do that even right when we're filming this episode. It's Friday. And I'm going to try, when I get done with work today and I go have dinner with my husband, I'm going to try to say, you know what, I'm putting my phone away. I'm going to pay attention to what conversation that we're going to have. And I think he's going to be like, oh, okay. But, but because I notice it when he has it, and we both have it all the time. So anyway, I think a lot of young people too don't even realize when they're looking at their phones.
Well, they say it even makes a difference to have it face down at the table. Like, how many people are sitting at a coffee bar or at the bar or at a restaurant and their phones are face down on the table? Like, it makes a difference to just have it out of sight, out of mind. Like it
out of sight, because you turn that over. If it's sitting there, you turn it over. I do.
But for the other person, it also it sends a different message. It's like there's no device in sight. It's just me and you, and there are no interruptions, and it changes the dynamic, I think, especially, I've been reading a lot about this with kids. It's if they see that my phone is on the table, they know that my attention is always going to be divided. So I actually try to not have my phone in the one-on-one, or to keep it in my pocket. So it's not even in a place where you can see it. So I'm not tempted, because it is. Yeah. It's so tempting.
I know. And sometimes you have real emergencies where you can say, listen, I'm going to keep this here because this is emergency. But you're still telling them whatever you have to say is not as important as this emergency. And that might be fine sometimes, right? But you can't do it every meeting. Right. All right. What's another tip? Yindy, you got one?
I think it's really important in your management style to delegate, to give people opportunity that's outside of their day-to-day or their job description, because you have to create leadership opportunity for longevity, and it also builds trust. And you also, you see what inspires them, and you want to make sure that you continue to create these opportunities for them as you manage each person. It's different for every person, but I think it's really important to delegate and to give people different opportunities.
Yeah. Sometimes that's hard, isn't it? Especially when we love doing something. Yeah. I've given up some things over the years where I'm like, oh, I love doing that though. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Is there a bigger opportunity for growth for that person and for me if I give this up? And usually the answer is yes, usually. And if that's true, then you're right. I gotta do it, because it's about how are we growing here, learning, and I'll find something new I love, right? Great. Tom, what about you?
Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit abstract. This has been a curious one for me. I've noticed, I don't know what the set of behaviors is exactly, but I've noticed that the people that I manage people, right? And those people that I've observed who somehow have drama reducing behaviors, like there's things that they do that actually reduce drama around them, that they're more successful than the people that sort of engage with the drama or amplify the drama unintentionally. It's not something they want to do. Sometimes you just get angry about something and then you do all these things and it seems to actually be making things worse. So one type of sort of drama, I don't know how to phrase this yet.
I call that like you're de-escalating conflict, or you're escalating it. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is slightly different than conflict. When I'm saying drama, I don't know how to quite define it yet. But it's like things that add stress to the environment, things that it's like people might just feel thing and they're stuck in an emotion that's a negative emotion. They can't let it go. It's being amplified because I say something that then triggers that thing in you. And now, whatever it is, that the people that are able to sort of bring that down to create a more boring work environment, it's a lot easier to achieve results when you're not sort of distracted by all these like personal quabbles, the little things, And So I had an example in my head here of something, and then it left. But
you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do something else, and you'll
yeah,
think of it then, and you just
yeah,
pop
there
in
you
when
go.
you've got it. Okay, we all know this
I
feeling,
feel
Tom.
terrible.
You're not alone. We know this feeling. We'll
Yep,
save
yep,
you for a
yep.
minute. You know, one of the tips that I have is this idea: when things get when I feel myself wanting to jump in and solve a problem, or wanting to jump in and take over, or need a sense of control, I've tried to have some powerful questions at the ready, because I find that if I ask and you mentioned questions, Yindy, earlier. Like, I find if I ask a question, then I kind of give myself time to like calm down my parasympathetic nervous system, like think, listen, and not just respond or react, right? So that I can hopefully, in not reacting, respond better. And this doesn't have to be something bad, but so I have a couple of questions or prompts that I always use. The first one is tell me more. So I have that one pretty much memorized. So if someone's telling me a problem, instead of jumping to how to solve it for them, which I really want to do sometimes, and it drives Yindy crazy when I do it, is I try, and I don't always succeed, but I try to be like, okay, interesting, tell me more, and get her or whoever it is I'm talking to just keep talking about it. And usually the person will find their own solution to it, like will, in the process of talking about it, comes up with what they should do anyway, right? Another good one to start with, sometimes I love this question, is if you're starting a new project or something, to say, what would great look like? So if you're goal setting, okay, what would a great year look like? What would a great outcome look like? And have them just talk about that, because then that really sets that initiative. The other thing is if someone's really struggling with, should I do this or should I do this? I had a coach once who said this to me all the time, and I even have it up behind my computer. And he would say always, and it would just cut through all my minutia of discussion that I was having in my ping-ponging in my head. He would say, Christine, where is the opportunity for growth? And that is where you should lean. Where is the opportunity for growth? If I was worried, do I spend money on this? We're tight on our resources. Okay, but where's the opportunity for growth? And I'd go, well, if I spend a little, we probably could have a bigger growth. Okay, well, that tells you something, right? Or if it's with delegation, like Yindy said. Another one that I use for myself sometimes, if I feel myself, getting, like you were saying, Tom, like a little up in my shoulders are raising and I'm getting a little stressed, I say, okay, Christine, what does this moment call for? And does it call for calm? Does it call for brevity? Does it call for galvanizing people? What does this moment call for right now? Does it call for listening? And like try to tell myself, okay, let me try to meet that moment. And then finally, if somebody is really stuck on some idea, or I am really stuck on one thing, and I think there's only one way, I love this idea is there something that is also true? So this employee is driving me crazy. They're a terrible person. They're this, they're that. They're lazy. They don't work anymore. They're never. And then I'll say that question in my head. Okay, is there something that is also true? All right. Well, they're also have been great for many years, and they're also came up with something really great last week, and they're also sick right now, and and then I start to really come down to a place of like, okay, it's not just one way or another. So anyway, those 5 questions: tell me more, what would great look like, where's the opportunity for growth, what does this moment call for, and is there something that's also true? I say over and over and over again in various parts of my life at some point. And I think it's good to come up with what are your questions and have them kind of ready, because to what Yindy said earlier is you want to have discussions in the moment as real time as possible, but you have to be ready. Your instrument cannot be stressed out and tight. So you need to have some of these little life hacks that help you bring yourself down to a place where you can be your best self, so you can bring out the best in them. Because what is leadership if not that, right? All right, Tom, did you think of it?
I did.
Okay,
So
I knew you would.
you could scrap almost everything that I said as my preamble to it, probably. But this is also, it is something relatively new for me in terms of trying to express what this is. But the phrase assume positive intent. So that could be very helpful, when you're managing others, that there's something you don't want to assume negative intent, because that can get that you might be wrong. And even if you're right, it's not helpful usually to get your outcome. So there's this advice to assume positive intent. I'm leaning more towards forget about intent and focus on behaviors. The reason I say that is that I will hear sometimes in one-on-ones, it's not a super common theme, but it does come up where someone's frustrated with a person they're managing because the person they're managing did X, Y, and Z. And the reason they did X, Y, and Z is because of whatever other letters you want to put in there. I ran out of letters. So they're focused on the intent, and that's usually a negative intent. But forget about intent. You got to focus on the behaviors. And because people could mean well, but have the behaviors be ineffective. People could have a negative intent and the outcome is actually positive behaviors. It could happen. You could mean to do harm, but you actually do accidentally do well. Like the whole thing is like, what are the behaviors that what are the things that they're doing? And are they appropriate towards the goals or towards the context? So not even assuming positive intent, although that's very helpful. I think just kind of like you have to have the discipline to not make assumptions at all about intent and focus on the specific behaviors the person is having, because that's what's coachable. I can never coach somebody on like, I think you're doing this because you're angry about this thing that I did last week and now you're taking it out on me by not doing this. That's a lot of assumptions. It's not helping you manage well. It's hard. This is like takes superhuman strength. You got to sort of let that go and be able to just say to yourself, okay, but what are the actual behaviors that they have? Because if they're not doing that thing, that's really what I need to focus on, is like, how do I get them on track for doing that thing? And if I engage in them saying, I know you're not doing this because of this thing even if you're right, they're just going to say no. And it's not helping you. It's not giving you clarity in how to manage. It's just clouding your judgment. It's actually adding that sense of conflict. It's adding drama to the situation. So if you're able to kind of like have the discipline to let go of the idea of intent and focus really on what are the behaviors, what are the sets of things, because that's what I can actually coach or give advice on. And
and people can't argue it as much.
Yeah,
it's so true. So true.
It's like, well, they meant well, but they didn't do all the things. That's not helpful how they meant really either. It's nice. I want people to mean well, but my main thing is, are they doing the things that are appropriate towards the task at hand, I guess.
Great. All right, Yindy, last one. You have the last word today.
Okay. I think never assume that everyone's needs are met. By doing that, again, it ties back everything that we're saying, but some of the most innovative ideas will come out of making sure that you never assume that everyone's needs are met, because then people will continue to come up with innovative ways to do things. Systems will change. You won't get stuck doing the same thing in the same way over and over again. If you just come at every conversation and every one-on-one and every goal with that saying, and that's like my mantra, not everyone's needs are met. And I think that just ties into innovation and making sure that we are just always evolving and getting better and not staying stuck. And I mean, that's what keeps people here, and it creates longevity, and change is important. That is my last tip.
All right. I love it. Change is important. All right. I want to thank you, Yindy and Tom, for joining us today. Hopefully you there listening got at least one, hopefully 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 tips that you can start implementing right away. The thing about any of this stuff is it takes practice. You won't be great at it at the beginning, but you will get great at it over time. And so the best thing you can do is give yourself opportunities to practice. So Yindy and Tom, thanks for bringing your expertise here today. Thanks for being so good at doing this too, because it makes my job a lot easier. That's for sure. And makes it a great place to work. So thank you guys. Like I said, we'll have stuff in the liner notes if you want any more of these tips, or check out some of our YouTube channel episodes that we've got going on too. So thank you guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye guys.
Thanks everybody for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.